You made it. Welcome to the table. You're just in time to make a dice roll.
Wait, for what? What kind of roll are we making?
We're trying to figure out how this system works, so we'll be making an investigation check. Want to do the honors?
Oh, sounds good. I have proficiency in that one. Oh, that's a nat one.
Well, this should prove interesting, if not at least entertaining. Welcome to the Nat One Nerds podcast.
Our story starts in the land Kaleth, where a goblinoid power is rising in the north with contention in its wake. We follow our intrepid heroes who I have called to bring balance to the chaos. Our fearless leader, Roscoe.
So you're the leader of this group? Well, that's what they tell me.
Our lady with one body and two minds, Lila and Garatha.
There are two of us here. They're very distinct personalities, but never dull moment, never lonely. That's for sure.
Our timid Henley.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you.
Our adventurous Fenrir.
And he's gonna start making his way, but he wants to be playing a song as he goes.
And our wise Boudreaux.
Once upon a time, they'd be human, and then they turn into a scary animal, and that's why you call them where, because you don't know where the human went. But
Tomes of the Chaos Bard, an actual play D&D podcast with original songs and music. A podcast for all ages. You can find us on any major podcast platform and YouTube. I am Solemn the Chaos Bard. Come, join us as we unroll the scroll to tell the tale. Bye!
Welcome to the table, everyone. This is the Nat One Nerds podcast. As you can probably already guess immediately, I am hosting this solo, as both my co-host is still settling in Indiana, and my wife has decided that our child needs attention because he has been crying for attention lately. I unfortunately don't have to completely solo this episode alone, as we have one of the creators for Roll Table for Two from Fights and Fancy. If you would like to go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, my name's Poppy. I'm one of the two writers of Roll Table for Two. Myself and my partner, Sammy, are both responsible for creating the game and writing the storybooks to go with it. Yeah.
The other thing you guys might have also noticed is that this is usually our Game Master episode, but as we've been explicitly highlighting the last two and a half episodes, is that it doesn't have a Game Master of any kind. The system itself essentially is the Game Master. So what better way to utilize this episode to actually talk to the creators of Roll Table for Two, which, as you probably could tell if you've listened to other episodes, me and my wife have been having a wonderful time with, even if we've kind of had to make judgment calls in the moment because we couldn't remember what the rule was from the rule book. Poppy, do you want to express how you and Sammy kind of came up with the system, what inspired it, different inspirations, that kind of thing, and maybe where it's going to go in the future?
So the irony is that I am always the game master. I am the forever game master of both of our D&D groups and usually any other TTRPG systems that we pick up as well. So really what came down to it was myself and my partner wanting to play more TTRPGs together and have more character moments together where I didn't have to be the game master, but without having to invite a third wheel into the equation to run it for us. And there is a severe lack of two-player games out there, not just in the TTRPG space, but in the board game space as well. So we were looking for lots of different ways in which we could create a system that would be fun for two people to play without feeling like one person had to take all of the effort of making the game, writing the game, running the rules and remembering everything else, and then the other person getting to sit and have a really lovely and fun time. So that was the intention behind Rolltable for Two. Hopefully, both of you guys, from what I've heard, have enjoyed it as getting to play characters together in a space in which the two of you are playing together alone without other players to worry about.
Yeah, we've absolutely been having a blast playing it, both me, my wife, and technically our son too, as he was also present in the room, as newborns need all the attention. So
Yeah.
so as much as we could, we've been having a lot of fun with it, because it was really interesting. Because I had, from social media and whatnot, I had seen stuff that was meant for like two players. I think I've seen there's a company that makes a D&D. It was utilizing the D&D system, but it was meant for two players, where the campaign itself, the adventure module, was the game master that would dictate based on choices you guys as players made. And I was like, oh, I wonder if there's like other stuff out there. And then as I kind of explored, I came across you guys and started following you guys on social media, and I was like, this looks super fun. I'm like, what really intrigued me was like, I could tell this system was made from the ground up as a two-player system with nothing else. It wasn't adapted, and I was like, okay, out of all the two players, this is probably going to be one of the best ones that I'm going to be able to find, because it was made from the ground up with this in mind. And so as I may have mentioned before, I bought it for my wife for our anniversary this year, and she's been kind enough to let us do our initial exploration of it here on the Nat One Nerds podcast. And it's just been really fun to sit and explore and kind of figure out where it was going to go. We had no idea how it was going to be. We're like, is it going to kind of be like a choose your own adventure book type thing, or is it going to be kind of like this? Which I felt like there was a little bit of that feel to it, that choose your own adventure a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, when we advertise it to people, especially at conventions where we're doing it face to face, we always introduce it as it's a choose your own adventure style role-playing game. So the book tells the story for you, but there's still branching paths. The only difference is that in this, there's a combat system, and you get skill checks, and your characters get to do all of the big, detailed strategy stuff that you get to do in larger TTRPGs, but in a simpler and less workload heavy system that you would find with a large game, where you need a game master to come up with absolutely everything.
No, and I like what you said earlier too, that it's a system where, because initially when me and my wife were exploring, like, oh, this is great for like couples and like date nights, because that's the viewpoint we're going through since my wife and I are married. And whatnot, and that's what we bought it for, as our anniversary and stuff like that. That's kind of the viewpoint we went in with. But I like how you said that was initially made for people that just wanted to play TTRPGs without having to worry about getting a large group together, scheduling conflicts, and just being able to have two people just jump in and just be players and not have to worry about everything you said, the preparation and all that, which can be fun, but it's just so easy to
bog you down kind of thing. Yeah. We found an awful lot of the two-player stuff that we were able to find was so heavily catered towards couples. So Rolltable for Two is something that a pair of friends or a pair of siblings are capable of playing without it getting too bogged down in the romance element of it, which I'm sure you guys picked the one that was sort of insinuated to be a romance backstory. And even then we were like, we're going to write it as if it doesn't have to be a romance. The romance is whatever you put in there for your characters, whereas a lot of other stuff is tailored specifically to you guys want to make characters that are in love with each other.
Yeah. Well, what I really liked too was, since you mentioned the backgrounds, that those backgrounds weren't actually in the initial core rulebook when creating a character. You essentially made a character there, but then you finished making it once you had been introduced to the setting, the common enemy, the Grimmed, and all that. Then you could pick the background that would kind of tie it all together and then formally start the adventure. Which it kind of threw us for a loop, but once we kind of had played through it and thought about it, we're like, we actually kind of like how you guys did that.
Yeah, the intention with that is actually, this is the first storybook that we have planned for Rolltable for Two altogether. So the Rolltable for Two system, once you've finished A Tale of Malice, we're intending to write a completely different campaign setting that you can take these rules to and play a different campaign setting. But the backstories are always going to be different depending on whether, obviously in this it's a typical swords and sorcery style RPG, but if we decide to do like a swashbuckling pirates adventure, the backstories are going to be completely different to that. So it feels like you're more integrated with the world setting and the story that is about to be told to you as well.
No, that's really great to hear, because I know me and my wife, we continue to plan on going through, because I think I initially purchased the first two storybooks for this adventure, so we still got at least one whole other one that we can get through. As a, for us, it would be a date night type thing, and we're really looking forward to seeing kind of where our characters Mal and Tucker kind of continue to end up. Funny, because while recording too, it was just so easy to sit there and just kind of, it really encouraged us to really work together and to socialize. But because at first we thought a lot of the choices we had to make, we had to do together and pick the same option. But then toward the end, I was like, wait, I don't think we have to if we don't want to. I believe the backstory you do pick together. That's one big thing that you do pick together and kind of have to agree on, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, the backstory is implicitly said it's one that the pair of you choose together, so that it's the thing that joins your characters together. But unless the book explicitly says otherwise, you can always make those choices separately. We did make the system so it was as flexible as possible, so where the book does not tell you explicitly anything, you can make the rules as whatever you interpret them to be, to make the game as fun as possible for you. Which is a bit of like me taking that experience from being a game master in other systems and going, the rules are just guidelines. You can use them to make the game more fun for you, because that's the more important thing at the end of the day. Not that you are following the rules explicitly, but that the game is fun.
Yeah, that's something I noticed. It's not a rule book; it's a guidebook, and it made me think of that scene from Pirates of the Caribbean where Elizabeth's like, they're more like guidelines anyway. They're not.
Yeah.
Nothing's set in stone. Why are you guys treating it like it's the Ten Commandments written in stone? Like you can you can do other things. So, which we really enjoyed, because I know when we were playing, one of the things that I think the first thing we kind of split on was the drinking contest at the beginning of this particular storybook. Because it's always interesting to see my wife role playing, because once she decides to role play into something, she like really dives in, and it's always so fun to watch. And because with Mal, like as soon as a drinking contest was mentioned, she made a note in her head like, Mal is absolutely a drinker. I don't care what the stats are. She's gonna try to do this, which was funny. And I don't know if we necessarily rolled correctly with the opponent Essa, but how we were playing it was Essa. The first roll she made, she automatically already failed. She rolled like a 1, and then I think the second time she rolled another 1. And so I know there was other opportunities and other things, if you had continued to do the drinking contest, could have happened. But we were like, well, if Essa's just going to keep rolling 1s, that doesn't seem like, story-wise, it doesn't make sense to continue the drinking contest. Because
and then you can retcon those decisions and just make it as narratively fun as possible for yourself.
Yeah, it just didn't make sense for her to continue drinking. So we're like, we're just gonna say she's done.
Yeah.
So, and Savannah, my wife Savannah, was like, oh, that was a lot easier than I thought. Because it's funny, because we didn't realize that's what spirit was. It was kind of almost like it could be used as a constitution type status.
It's more about your mental resilience kind of thing. So it's used for mages quite a lot in the system, so they use it for their magic. But then if there is, say in other systems, if it's a wisdom skill check or something like that, then you would use it for that. And because there isn't a fortitude or a constitution in that, we make it between either a strength or a spirit kind of roll.
Okay.
Depending on the feel of the scene.
Okay. No, that makes a lot more sense. And so it's interesting because she had 0 spirit to her stat, which is what the drinking contest was calling for. Um, and the one character that chose not to drink was the one that had a tally mark in spirit. But I was like, but I'm playing a charmer thief, so it's like I feel like it's not about participating in things, it's about being able to manipulate the situation in his favor, which is why I thought of like I feel like he would then try to like organize a more formal way to gamble and to make a bet on this. And obviously,
Mm,
as a person facilitating this, then take a cut of the profits for himself, which is why I was like, I don't know if it's in the rules, but I'm just gonna roll a d6 to see how much gold he got. So that's how I got 4 gold. I was like,
yeah.
'cause I feel like most people wouldn't in the bar wouldn't argue about it. So,
Mm,
um, especially once we learn more about Essa, we're like, okay, she wouldn't have argued about that type of thing. So, but that was very fun, and because I think Savannah not only was she winning, but she was also rolling pretty high on the d6 too. I think she rolled like 4 or higher on the d6, like the 2 times she went to drink.
mm. It was kind of the reason why we decided to do a D6 system over like a D20 or a D12 or whatever, was because then if we give you smaller numbers for your skills to add on, um, you can either be someone who is extremely good at something naturally or someone who is doing stuff purely on luck. And there will be, as it kind of shows in the guidebook, if you're doing more difficult skill tests, it will be harder for you to succeed on them. But in the easier ones, you can roll a 6 on the dice and succeed well at something that you're doing. But it might not be, say, if someone gets the full 11, which is the highest that you can get on the rolls when you're adding your skills on. It might not be the ultimate success that you're able to get by getting an 11.
Yeah, I did notice the tables. Obviously, since we only did the first storybook, which is an introduction to the whole thing, and just kind of getting, I could tell it was definitely with let's give people an ease into the system and into the setting and all this different stuff. So obviously, nothing was really super hard because all the checks were outside of facing the Grimmed Bear at the end. It was just festival games.
Yeah. It's designed to be a tutorial village kind of vibe, so you're getting the.
It was. I will say though, for a tutorial, it was very super fun. So just because we're using the term tutorial for this doesn't mean you guys should not play it. You absolutely should and do it. It's been a lot of fun. It just gives a lot of opportunity for you to really, well, essentially get into character with your character. But it was really fun. I really liked the setting of Ivyfell. Um, Even my character, because with his charmer thief background, I couldn't help but have him be like, I like this town too much already to do any real shenanigans within it. And so outside of the drinking contest, he didn't really make any attempt to swindle people or manipulate situations to his advantage. He just simply was able to participate with somebody that he had finally reunited with after some period of time. Him and Mal's background was that their town had been. We kind of took 2 of the backgrounds and took the
Yeah.
flavor of one and then added it, which I didn't realize till we had done that. I was like, wait a minute, did I just pick 2 backgrounds?
I mean, beyond the like basic introduction of what the backstory mechanically you've chosen, everything else is completely up to you. So
Mm.
if you go, oh, to tie us in more with the story, I want to include this, then yeah, sure, go for it.
Yeah, yeah. So I just thought it was really funny because we were rereading it when we started the actual play. My wife was rereading some of the stuff to kind of remember where we had left off a little bit, and as she was doing so, I noticed I was like, wait a minute, I didn't realize I had picked that subconsciously, but it was kind of cool. I was like, oh, this system knows me so well already. So um,
There's a few tropes in there.
yeah, and it was really funny. We did have fun. The whole backstory where we had a special night. It was just really funny, and we had a lot of fun with how you guys worded that one. Because at first we're like, oh, special night, and I was like, oh, it helps explain a little bit more. And my wife was like, in my mind, that didn't help. Like it reinforced it, but that's because of the mindset that we were in, and it's just really fun. And we could tell like what you guys were intending behind it, but for us as players, jumping in and how we think and interact in our daily lives, it was just really, it was already we were already having a lot of fun just like reading the backgrounds and like kind of figuring that out and
Yeah.
building characters. Speaking of those characters, what inspired? Because we noticed in the rules that there were two actions you could take during your turn, which was movement and using ability points.
Hmm.
Our background is Dungeons and Dragons. That
Hmm.
is our background, which is probably the same with 80% of TTRPG players out in the world. And we're used to having those actions you can do that don't really have any cost.
Hmm.
Which is why my wife likes playing. She typically plays rogues because she doesn't have to worry about spell slot. She doesn't have to worry about sorcery points for sorcerers. She doesn't have to worry about spending all of this and keeping track of all this stuff. She's able to just go and do. And so, where did that idea for ability points come from for you guys?
So it's actually modeled more on video games. In the most obvious kind of similarity is Pokemon, wherein you would learn moves that you can use for your like Pokemon, and then they have a certain amount of those that they can use before they can no longer use that ability. It was a way in which we could make combat more interesting, so that it wasn't just I'm just going to run in and hit it for 5 turns of combat, and make it really kind of slow pacing. We liked the idea of making it so that instead of just having a base AC in Dungeons and Dragons terms, or guard in this one, that you could manipulate that to be higher or lower on both your side and the opponent's side. So you're constantly thinking of different strategic moves that you could do, but then you're also thinking about, well, am I going to get exhausted by using this too much kind of feeling? And as you go through the adventures, you start picking up items, which items are the free abilities that you're able to use. Those don't cost an action to do so unless it says so in the item. So that might be the case of like having an extra bit of breakfast in the morning that gives you some of your ability points back, or using it to heal, or throwing something in the face of the bear that makes it choke, or something like that. So yeah, there's a lot in some of the larger TTRPG systems that ends up bogging down the rules just because you've made it so customizable at that point that there are a million and different ways in which you can change your character up, but then you can't balance that as efficiently with everything else that is coming up. So in a way to make it balanced through the system, so every single option that someone could choose would have its ups and downs, but also to make it interesting in a way in combat, especially since you don't have a game master there to dictate what the monster's doing, and it's a bit kind of random on the monster side.
I like how you were explaining the ability points and how essentially what I'm getting out of it was that it's even in the combat scenario, instead of just hacking and slashing kind of mindlessly, it's causing you to really think about what your character would do in that situation, where they're going to devote their energy and time and thought into. At least for me, it definitely helped continue to encourage roleplay even in the midst of combat.
Because there's a lot of stuff that can help out your partner in combat, so it's not necessarily about building all of your damage, but maybe building your damage together as a team.
Yeah, and that's a lot of things I picked when building my thief. Was I think one of the abilities I chose when building the character was Team Cheer, which is I think is you can add your spirit modifier to your rolls for the next 3 turns. I know the background we chose allowed one to sacrifice guard and give it to the other. And so since Mal was the one that decided to run in and start stabbing the bear, because my wife again is coming from that D&D roguish background where that's what they do is stab, as she likes to put it. As a charmer, I feel like I'm not going to get into physical combat if I absolutely don't have to. I'm going to sit and encourage my partner to continue to do what they're wanting to do. And I had absolutely a blast just being able to play that supportive role in this encounter. And so I like how the ability points you do does continue to encourage that.
Kind of example is the Final Fantasy series and stuff like that, where you'd have special kind of counters for your special abilities and stuff. So it's more kind of turn-based, combat inspired.
Especially coming from a D&D background, the ability points and that the way you guys set it up was a little bit of a loop for us, but ultimately in the end, I think not only me, but Savannah also realized, oh, this is really fun, this is really great. We did have to be mindful of our AP, but at the same time, we shouldn't be afraid to use the AP in the situation that we're in. For her, she felt like the bear had to be subdued. For my character, it came down to that supporting role and just making sure that if she's going to be in its face, then she needs to have her guard up, and she needs to, if she's going to spend AP, then increase the chances of, not only hitting, but also being able to cause damage when that's intended. I also liked how you could gain more aspects that you could use ability points on. You can gain another one at the end of, I'm guessing, every session.
Yeah, so the end of every session is designed as like a level up of sorts. So you collect abilities at the end of each session, so you can swap those out. At some point, you will get higher level abilities for your class further down the line, and you also gain more ability points, more hit points, etc. The first session is very much like a level 1 session where you're going, oh, I don't know about using up all of my spell slots, and I'm going to be hit down pretty easily if I do get hit by some of the damage. But as you go further through the storybooks, you're going to run into those situations more often in the storybooks, which will mean that you'll be there going, do I need to conserve my ability points if I'm not going to get a long rest until the end of the book, kind of thing.
No, I really like that. Again, as much as I love Dungeons and Dragons, so many times, and especially both as a player and a dungeon master, how many times players just be like, you know what, we're just going to run in and just start hacking and slashing everything we can see in our path to get the goal done. Even when they intend to do a stealthy approach, they end up just hacking and slashing. Roll table for 2, obviously if you want to do that, you can, but it's definitely it's not discouraging that as so much as encouraging other options. And I like how it does that. It still gives you the agency to do what you want, but it's encouraging you to, again, let's really think about and discuss how we're going to tackle this enemy that just appeared, out of the tall grass, if you will.
Yeah.
So in creating the system, were there any aspects of it that took a while to tinker with until you and Sammy were both satisfied with how it ended up?
I think it was always that ability points part. Just balancing a system overall is often one of the most difficult things, especially for something where we're also writing the adventure to go alongside it, because we don't know what combination everybody's going to pick. You have to make sure it's balanced for every single combination. So there will be some combinations where it feels a bit more like a breeze, and there will be some combinations where it feels an awful lot more difficult. I suppose the same could be said for making a party that's out of balance, kind of thing. It's that part, and still making it enjoyable for everyone. I think we've never really kind of had a part that we weren't happy from, like, the final draft kind of thing. So we went in with a pretty clear idea of what we wanted it to do. And when we felt like it had done that for people, we put it forward to a bunch of play testers, and they all seemed rather happy with it. So we kept it as it was.
No, I could see that because I think most people would agree. Because in a way, because the book is the game master, you guys unknowingly are the game master for everybody that does play the system. It's already hard enough, I'd imagine, to do it for just a few people at a table and do your own little campaign with whatever system and trying to find the balance of everything. But to create a system that's going to balance for whatever combination these two people anywhere in the world are going to do, making sure it's at least balanced enough to be doable and to be able to get through if done right. So that must have been, I don't know if that's something that you guys were thinking of when trying to really.
Yeah, and I think that's where them being guidelines, not rules, is so important to the system. I don't know whether you actually took a look at the So You Died page or whether it's spoilers to you yet. So the rules that we've set kind of around death and failure in the system is that it's your game. If you get to that point and you're like, oh, it's ruined all of my fun, then you can just ignore the fact that that's happened and have your hero come back from the brink and be like, charges straight into the battlefield, does an amazing thing and succeeds and moves on with the story. Or you can do the melancholy of they failed this time and this is where the story ends kind of feel. So you can have the people who really want to be rules abiding and go with as chance says, that's what's happening to me. And you can have the people who want to be a bit more flexible with that. And I think that's possibly what makes it the more enjoyable part, is that you have player authority on the game, even though it's typically quite a railroaded session.
Yeah, it's so interesting that in these kind of discussions, talking about TTRPGs in general, the fundamental foundational thing is making sure everybody's having fun. And so whatever is needed to ensure that the fun continues is ultimately the one real rule that you should follow, is making sure everybody's having fun. And we definitely felt throughout the first session, the meeting point in Ivy Fell, that we definitely had control over what we were going to do. I know in one instance, the barrel races. Interestingly enough, I'm not sure why my wife was thinking that you had to be in the barrel in order to do the race. And I was like, I don't think that's what they intended. And so we had to keep reading. And eventually, once we decided that we apparently decided to play it safe in case you do have to get in the barrel.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, I know we're just playing characters, on paper, but that doesn't sound fun either way. So as we were playing, we're like, oh, you run along with the barrels. And so once we realized that, I think once she realized that, my wife's like, oh, maybe I would have picked.
I mean, it's equally a fun part. When I was listening to it, it was equally a fun part to imagine your characters being like, oh my god, are they going to make us get into barrels? And being like, no, I'm not going to get... And then seeing the children pursued by barrels down the hill. And also, I think one of you said that also doesn't seem very safe.
Oh, we had so much fun with that, and we ultimately, as you know, just ended up running alongside the barrels, and so, which kind of made sense because obviously, based on how it was worded, it seemed like an event that was truly open to anybody to participate in, but it was definitely something that kids
It was all ages friendly.
It was all ages friendly, but we did notice that the usage of the word children was heavy in the description, and so it kind of made sense for, without having to participate, we still kind of participate by running alongside the barrels and kind of just reliving childhood memories. And it was so interesting to see Savannah's character Mal having such a fun time, but for Tucker, it turned into this PTSD of like running alongside the barrels, but then it turned into running from something, and then it turned into reliving from running from the Grim that destroyed their hometown, their village.
Yeah, I loved the little trauma moments that he had because I knew what was coming. So I was there like, oh, it's going to be great when the bear shows up later.
Yeah, and so that's why we ended up, because obviously the system like encouraged you to like confront the bear, and so that way you could figure out how combat worked in the system. Um, and so when faced with it, I was like, okay, the system I think is definitely encouraging us to face the bear. So I'm like, what motivation would give Tucker to do that? And it's like he's liking the town. He's ultimately having a fun time, not having to. He's able to just be himself, not have to worry about whether he's a thief or not. And so he's like, not again. And so that's what kind of motivated him to go and face this grim bear that just suddenly appeared out of nowhere. And we joked that this is why you go through PETA or the Humane Society in your animal entertainment pursuits. Because if you don't, then bad things happen. In this case, they turn into like horrific monsters of darkness. And
Yeah. And it's great to see that the village were like, we're not going to do the bear wrangling if the bear's really sick. It's fine. Probably not a good idea.
Yeah, the bear was quite sick. But yeah, it was also cool to do that. So we had a lot of fun. So it was kind of this. It was very easy for us to role play that, and we definitely noticed that in the book there was definitely moments where you guys in your writing of it specifically like, okay, this is a great role play moment, and therefore we encourage you to what is your like really think about what your character's thinking, because and the reason why I like it so much is because I almost wish that now I haven't really run too many, again, just utilizing D&D as the example because that's what most people foundation is. And I haven't run too many specific adventure modules from D&D because I like to just have a world and then kind of build from there. That's kind of my style of being a game master, a DM. But I kind of wish that more systems would particularly allow the GM to realize moments in the story or in the adventure that is being followed, like, hey, have your players really sit down and consider, this and this and this, around the campfire for the first time, or that's that trope. Because I going back to the backstories real quick, I like those because it's so much better than just, hey, you all met in a tavern, and which is fine. It's a great starting point, but there's so many.
It can be difficult to make a party stick with you just met in a tavern, so it's good to have a way in which you are already stuck to each other as characters.
Yeah, so I like that, but as I said, I really like how you guys really encourage it, because I've seen some products made for D&D to help facilitate that need that's lacking, because D&D and some other things, they're so combat heavy and focused that while it's a role-playing game, there's not as much room for role-playing and encouragement on that front as there is just rolling dice and getting excited about really big numbers all the time. Which, don't get me wrong, super fun. I mean, even
we all love rolling lots of dice.
yeah, and my wife joked, like, I was like, oh, we use D6s. She's like, oh, that doesn't really narrow it down for us. We still have lots of D6s in different colors, like in shades. So we used her nice Caribbean blue set that she has.
Nice.
So, but yeah, I did very much like how you specifically took the time in your writing to be like, okay, here's a great moment to really have your characters continue to bond based on the backstory that's already been set for you. And I really like that a lot.
We've had so much feedback from people who have said that, they play TTRPGs and they wanted their partner to start playing TTRPGs with them, and they've used this system as a way to introduce them to playing TTRPGs, and it's given people confidence to try out larger ones, because at that point they kind of know how to role play, as it kind of guides them through the process of thinking about their character, thinking about what they would do, thinking how they would react to things, and giving them the space to talk about that together. As a game master, it's often something that I end up prompting my players as well around a table. So there's a lot of when I have been the player, a lot of kind of behind the scenes thinking of like, I'm thinking my character's doing this because of XYZ reason, that you never say out loud to the other players at the table, which could be, argued as meta knowledge that some players may use to their advantage if they're a bad meta gamer, for example. But in the games that I've run where everybody's been of the agreement of, like, we know where the line is between what a character knows and what we know, they've found it more enjoyable to have all of those things said out in the open where they can hear it and everybody understands the things that are happening in the game world, rather than it all being like a silent mystery behind all of the player characters kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that's interesting. So when you guys were making the system then, as you guys were building it, did you guys realize that your system could easily be, for lack of a better term, almost a gateway drug into the TTRPG community as a whole? Is that something you guys realized pretty early on, or something kind of later on, or?
That was something that we realized after it had been fully released. So we'd given, we started out by doing it as a demo set to people so that they could try it out, let us know how good the first session was and whether it's working, and then we can write the rest going forwards. And it wasn't until we did the full first release of session 1 and session 2 that people started saying, oh no, we want to play all of the other TTRPGs now that we've played this. And I was like, oh, okay, we thought we'd just be picking from the existing TTRPG fans to play this. So it was a surprise, but it was a pleasant surprise, and it made me thankful that I'd actually explained the basics of roleplay and what a TTRPG is and everything like that in the book, because it was one of those things where I was like, I feel like everybody knows this stuff, so.
Yeah, because I can only imagine that must have been, as a creator, that must have been a very wholesome moment and uplifting moment to be like, oh, this is my system. It's not just another TTRPG that's out there. It's one that's going to introduce people to just this amazing world in general. Because in this community, there's not really that much competition, whether you're a content creator, you're creating your own TTRPG systems or supplements or stuff like that. It's not really so much a competition as being able to allow have the options in such a creative, community. And to know that your system is going to be kind of a gateway for a lot of people, that just must be one of the most wonderful feelings, I'd imagine, as a creator.
Yeah, definitely, 100%. As someone who now teaches people how to play Dungeons and Dragons, so a lot of the people I'm running games for are new players, I'm wholly aware of how difficult it is to leap into something that is so daunting as a larger system. So to give people kind of like that little boost to step in so that they feel confident enough to go into a larger system and pick up the rules and just play as they're learning is great.
Yeah. No, because during our discussion, I also was realizing how much of a gateway this was for people. Because I know it took so long to convince my sister to try out D&D. It took so long, and somehow I finally got her to do a one-shot session, and luckily she wasn't too overwhelmed by it. But this system is such a great way to introduce people to it, because it honestly takes out so many of the things that cause worry and stress: scheduling, finding people, playing, because it's 2-player, you're playing with somebody that's familiar to you, whether they're
someone you trust, kind of thing.
Yeah, somebody you trust, that whether they're already a TTRPG player or if you're both new. So you have that, and it's just, and as you kind of said, it's kind of has this foundation of being more or less kind of this choose your own adventure story that people may be familiar with on top of it from their own childhood. And it's just got a lot going for it that just takes away out so many things, because as I was saying, earlier, I can't remember if it's before we started recording or not, was when doing part 2 of our actual play, Savannah and I had to keep stopping every 15 minutes or so because life was happening. But this system, if you really want to play it, it's not too hard to just, okay, let's just stop where we're at, leave it on the table,
Put a
and come
bookmark
back.
in it.
Yeah, put a bookmark in it and just kind of come back almost literally again like a choose your own adventure book. You just kind of mark where you're at, and you're able to come back to it so easily just whenever you have free time, and there's no stress about making the time. If you're playing in person, traveling to meet up with everybody, it just kind of takes all that out. So whether people are interested in TTRPGs or already playing TTRPGs, this system's great to have on your shelf. I
Mm.
I think it's truly meant for everybody, which I feel like a lot of systems can't really fully claim that it's literally for everybody. So, because if you're not really that big into combat, then D&D in the long run might not be a great system for you.
Yeah. There's always the thing of like, if you're spending every single session of D&D role playing, should you really be using the D&D system kind
Yeah.
of thing? And I think that was a big reason behind us making a completely separate system to D&D, was just this whole thing isn't built for D&D, so we should make something completely new.
Mhm.
And in doing that, hopefully we've made something that's super accessible to people.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm no expert per se. I'm just a D&D player that's just rolling dice, trying to figure out other TTRPG systems as they go along. But at least on our end, we definitely agree and feel like Roll Table for Two as a system is meant for everybody that's either already in TTRPG systems or is thinking about giving them a try. And this is a great system. I know so far the system I always initially told people to try out if they wanted to get into TTRPGs was a system called Fate Accelerated, which is a simplified version of the Fate system. Because the character creation process is fairly simple, like yours is, and it's mostly role play heavy. Which I feel like if you're going to get into a role playing system or game, you should be prepared to do a little bit of role playing. So, unlike combat where there's all these different rules, it's like, oh no, just kind of, and role playing could include people, characters that are, your character could be an introvert or, though I do know somebody that tried to not only make their character an introvert, but also was mute so they couldn't talk and like kept trying to think of and was a hermit. And I was like, you can play that if you really want to, but since you're playing a role playing game as a dungeon master, I'm going to encourage you to maybe take a couple of those aspects away.
Yeah.
So you can actually engage with the party a little bit. Um, but this system makes it so easy though, and that's what I'm loving more about it. And the more I think about it and the more I play it, I just continue to just have an absolute blast and continue to fall in love with it. Because I've been playing for several years and I'm having such a fun time with it. My wife's having such a fun time with it. And this is the new system that I'm going to tell people to try out when they want to try TTRPGs for the first time. This is this is the new go-to answer for that.
Thank you. It's always really like overwhelming to hear as a small publisher. So it's absolutely wild the amount of reception we've received from it, considering that not 2 years ago we were making D&D character journals out of our living room.
Mhm.
And now we're in our own games shop and publishing our own games and stuff. So it's just incredible to know that we've made so much of a difference to people's playing habits and given people fun memories and stuff to have.
Yeah. So speaking of that, actually, so not only do you make Roll Table for Two, a whole new amazing TTRPG system, honestly, which I'm kind of debating revisiting not only personally but also on the podcast because it's so much fun. And it sounds like we're entertaining enough for people as well, so that's nice to hear too.
Certainly for me.
Yeah, that's good. um, but you said you make D&D character journals. But I also noticed that you guys have started dipping your toes into kind of the solo journaling TTRPG kind of genre. I believe it's called Notes in the Twilight or notes?
Yes, Notes in the
Okay.
Twilight, which is written by Sammy. I've had a hand in editing and helping with a bit with the mechanics of the game, but it's majoritively written by Sammy.
Okay.
Which follows basically you play as a traveling bard through a typical swords and sorcery style universe, going through dungeons and abandoned mansions, temples, etc. And it's after the adventurers have already cleared out the place of monsters. So these places are completely abandoned. And it's your job as a travelling bard to tell the story of why they ended up abandoned in the first place, or why the monsters ended up taking this place as their home. And you do that through, instead of rolling dice, we've chosen the mechanic of you basically throw coins on the table, and depending on how many heads are up, depends on how many points you would usually have on a 6-sided dice. And depending on that point correlates to the kind of sense that you get as a memory of this room that you are in. And that's kind of like communicating with the spirits that are still kind of locked in this place so that you get those memories of what has happened in this place. So it's kind of a solo journaling TTRPG on 2 different levels of you're writing the story of the place, but you're also writing the story from the perspective of a bard traveling through this place. So you get to write 2 levels to it.
That honestly sounds super fun, honestly. Because I recently had heard about solo journaling TTRPGs and how it's kind of becoming its own little subgenre within the TTRPG, like a notable one in the TTRPG community. Because I've heard of ones, the ones I've heard about are a couple free ones like Over the Mountain. I've heard of one called The Librarian's Apprentice, where you're in a library, which, as an introvert who loves books, that sounds fun too. But kind of as you're saying, I would imagine that you guys creating, well, mostly Sammy, creating Notes in the Twilight is, again, kind of from that same viewpoint of making sure that it just takes away all the some of the notable problems with larger TTRPG groups, and just being able to pick it up, playing for 15 minutes, and then being able to bookmark it and and being able to come back to it very easily. So
yeah, it's being able to create fun gaming experiences that are not limited by the size of your friend group, or being able to meet face to face with that friend group. So in the case of most board games and stuff like, you have to all be within your local area or find one night in a month that you can all meet up and agree a game that you all want to play, kind of thing.
Yeah. So have either you or Sammy played solo journaling TTRPGs before that acted as an inspiration?
We've both played Apothecaria, which is a adventure where you play as an apothecary, potion maker, and you basically cure the ailments of people who come into your shop and go off and explore to collect herbs to make those potions, kind of thing. And that's definitely more of a you're writing your journal of your work day as you are going through that, and depending on the things that you roll on the dice tables that are in there depends on the things that you manage to find. So it's definitely more on the edge of the journaling side. And then we've also played Colossal, which is a really, really interesting solo adventure game where you play as a person in this fantasy world where castles basically come to life. And you have to travel through all of these different layers of a ginormous castle, and every single layer is like its own world setting. And face off against these monsters, and you're creating basically the world around you depending on the cards that you draw from a deck of cards. So definitely we've had more fun with like finding unique mechanics and stuff like that for the games with a solo game.
Okay. Yeah, because I've the more I hear about solo journaling TTRPGs, because usually for me TTRPGs was always an excuse to socialize and get together with friends, which is still very much is all about that. But I think the benefit, at least what's coming to my mind right now, is that the benefit to solo journaling or even the systems where it's two-player like Roll Table for Two even, I think it's a really great way for people if they want to um, increase their abilities as a storyteller, whether that's from a player perspective or from a game master perspective.
Mm.
There's no pressure from anybody. You're just sitting here journaling and writing and being able to kind of just, in a sense, it's just this perfect excuse to almost, practice, because thinking about, okay, why is the world in this game the way it is? Kind of like with yours, Notes in the Twilight. What's the story behind the dungeon? Why does this dungeon even exist almost? And who made it? Why did monsters come in? And it forces you to kind of think about all these different things. Almost like a prompt book, but way, way, way better and probably way, way more fun.
Hmm.
That kind of thing. So I don't know if that's something you guys had thought of, or if I'm just kind of thinking.
Yeah, like we're both writers, so we're always looking for new ways to kind of get like inspiration for our upcoming projects and away from games design as well. I know that my partner's working on a novel that she's writing. So anything to kind of help with keeping the exercises going as a writer and making it more interesting is something that we've always been interested in, is what has drawn us especially to single player TTRPGs as well. But as storytellers, it has always helped us to kind of start to think more in depth about things. And as you exercise those, it also makes you better at improvising them. So from a game master standpoint, you start to think more about like, well, if it's going to be a magical tower that they've stumbled across here because the roll table has decided that's what's here, then why is it here? Who made it? Is there anyone still living there, etc.? And you start thinking of those things automatically.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And I think the reason I'm thinking that these kind of systems help with just storytelling in general, whether that's into other TTRPGs or being a better player or a better game master, or as you kind of said, just an excuse to be a better writer. Because I also write that, and I haven't done that a lot since having a child. Um, the closest I get is playing TTRPGs right now.
Life will always find a way to get in the way.
It will. Which is again another reason why the solo ones or even Roll Table for Two are such great systems, because it's so easy to just take 15 minutes. There's no real long commitment. You don't have to commit 2 to 4 hours of a night to just somehow find a way to make it work, and hopefully everybody else's schedule matches up with that time frame, especially if you're playing online and there's time zones involved, which, as stated before, it can be even harder and harder. But I've heard of authors stating that TTRPGs were a huge, heavy resource that they've used to help create their own novels and stories. Which I believe
both myself and my partner have a game when we go to bookstores now, which is just pick up the game and go, was this a D&D campaign?
I think one author that I think a lot of people are into, if they're into TTRPGs. I think Brandon Sanderson has said that a lot of his stuff, and once he said that, I was like, oh my gosh, this was a D&D game. This was absolutely a D&D game. And which is great to hear. So I can't remember exactly which one, because I'm sure so many of them were based off either D&D or some other TTRPG or creative session that he was a part of, and whatnot. So but yeah, no, that's super exciting to hear. So how many sessions are available for Roll Table for Two, and is Notes in the Twilight available for purchase right now?
So Notes in the Twilight is complete and available for purchase currently, both as PDF and as physical copies on our website. Roll Table for Two, we currently have sessions 1, 2, and 3 fully available. Session 4 is going to be released on the 30th of April. We are aiming to have 7 sessions before the completion of the campaign. So it's not too long until we'll be starting our second storybook, of which we've not decided on the theme for yet. But again, you can get those both in physical and digital copies on our website as well.
All right. Well, if you want an early vote, that seafaring idea might be pretty fun to do. So
I definitely keep bringing it up, so it might end up being.
well, that's also coming from a guy that lives in the middle of a desert, so that sounds fun because I don't know anything about maritime stuff. So
Well, we live right next to the beach, so we know a lot.
I do not. So in a sense, it would be very fun to play because it's probably about as close as I'll get unless there's that lucrative of a job offer somewhere along the coastline. Oh, but it's a bit away. So because the state I live in, there's nothing. I think California's the closest. So
yeah,
either that or Mexico, one of the two. But that's a whole different country. So well, awesome. So I guess to kind of wrap up, do you want to share where people can find you guys to learn more about your products and whatnot?
So you can find all of our products at our website, fightsandfancy.co.uk. Or you can reach out to us on any of our social media platforms. We are thankfully small enough that you're still talking directly to us if you contact us on anything. So if you do have any questions or comments, you can contact us anywhere.
Awesome. So, but I mean, as far as Nat One Nerds, we definitely endorse your guys' stuff. It's very fun. I'm gonna have to check out Notes in the Twilight now because that legitimately sounds super fun. And I could definitely use an excuse to have a creative exercise on the side like that. So, but thank you so much for joining me. As I said, me and my wife have had so much fun with your system. And we look forward to continuing to see where the adventure takes. We'll take our 2 thieves. I'm not sure if you ever expected 2 people to pick the same class. We did.
I'm fairly certain that both me and my partner picked mages on our first run, and it was really difficult. So.
It's almost that trope of the wizard dies from 1d4 something damage.
Yeah.
And that's what I was kind of afraid of. And I was like, I don't know. The idea of just both of us being like a pair of thieves was too fun. And we're like, we're just gonna do it. One of us should probably be a fighter or something, but it's fine. I'm sure we'll be okay.
Ironically, the one that you picked was in fact the bard in quotation marks class that we designed as a thief.
Yeah, I had that feeling from it. Although if I played, I'm sure I'll play it again and choose different options. But I think the next time I run through this, I'll probably pick the archer fighter because that sounds kind of like a ranger, which is one of my favorite classes to play in in a couple different TTRPGs. I like rangers and just the general aesthetic of them. So I'll probably do that. So, but thanks again so much for joining us. Guys, as you said, go check out their website and check out their social medias. I know you guys are on Instagram. Are you on anything else besides Instagram? Or
we're on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, Facebook. I think that's pretty much everyone. We're just not on Twitter, basically.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Cool. But yeah, definitely check them out, guys. It's such a great system, and it's perfect for, as you said, it's perfect for just a couple friends, a couple siblings, a couple partners, and it's great for people that are veterans in the community, but also for people that are thinking about dipping their toes into TTRPGs. So definitely check them out. And obviously, you guys, if you haven't already, you can follow Nat One Nerds on Instagram, Facebook, and Threads. Threads is still kind of iffy right now because I'm figuring out how to use that because I was never a Twitter person to begin with. But you can also find us on YouTube. Currently, you can just find the audio there, as we have not dipped our toes into video editing yet. But maybe be on the lookout for maybe potential future stuff. And if you haven't already, share the podcast with your friends, give us a review, and just continue to listen. We really appreciate the support. Any final thoughts before we close out, Poppy?
Just thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, no, thank you for having us. We'll see you guys next time, and happy rolling.